This isn't obviously a political podcast, but it's wrapped up with the budget. I was speaking to a friend. One of the main things that was stood out with whether it's Conservative come in or Labour, and then even the members who change within the same parties, it's a short-term approach. It's just for votes. I spent a lot of time in Dubai, and if you look at countries who are progressing, they have a long-term strategy of 25-30 years.
The regulations around buy-to-lets, which a lot of our clients just didn't want to get involved in, which we saw recently with our Chancellor, who decided not to.
Yeah. Whereas like someone will come in, whether it be Conservative or Labour, or a change of Prime Minister, and they'll do it for votes. They'll have a short-term, can I win the next election? That is their main aim, not how I can improve the country in 25-30 years and have that long-term vision which everyone buys into.
Let's say we're running a manufacturing business, that all adds up, doesn't it? Well, that sounds great because we can put $500,000 in, we can borrow 250, we can buy a factory, and then the rental would then be fed back from the company back into the SaaS.
Yeah.
We'd be quite happy with that, and that's great.
Welcome to Karak with Kully, the podcast that serves up strong conversations with real entrepreneurs, founders and creators. I'm your host, Kully, and every week we brew up honest talk, the kind that hits hard and keeps it real. No filters, just stories, lessons, and a whole lot of Karak. Welcome to another episode of Karak with Kully. Today we've got Richard Bishop, IFA. We'll let you, Richard, how would you want to introduce yourself? A man of many hats.
Yeah, a man of many hats.
So, more importantly, first, let's start with some Karak. You'll have to, don't worry, it's not Karak like you're used to. So,
thank you. Ooh.
You have to let me know what you think.
All of it.
Because this is homemade, especially.
Oops. Oh, I've dropped most of it.
We've got spillage. He's got a shaky hand today.
That's lovely. A bit more of that later.
Was it that good?
Yeah.
So today we're going to have a brief discussion about the budget that's been recently released, your thoughts on the topics and the clients that you're dealing with, what they're facing, and then we'll go on to the second half, more about the services that you offer and how you help our clients, and the more the day-to-day questions that they have. So when as you're aware, the budget was announced. I know you was away on holiday, so an IFA on holiday when the budgets are announced, must be doing something right.
Well, deliberate that was.
Yeah,
I thought I'd go to Mexico because everybody was telling me it was going to be a terrible budget. So I thought, well, I'll go to Mexico for 2 weeks and then pretend it didn't happen. But fortunately, I've had to come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're all bearing the brunt of the queries. So one of the more simpler things that I think was expected, that the personal allowance is staying the same for another couple of years. What are your thoughts on that? But they've increased minimum wage, so due to fiscal drag, more people are going to be paying more tax, but they're not increasing their allowances for quite a while, so they're recouping more tax. What are your thoughts of this, and in more layman's terms and understanding for the listeners?
Well, I mean, that's one of the issues. I mean, raising the tax thresholds hasn't usually been an issue previously, probably over the last 10 years, because inflation's been very, very low. So it hasn't had such a major impact. But, I mean, when you've got inflation still running at 4%, so prices are still going up 4% every single year, then the erosion of that overall is pretty dramatic, because you're paying more tax and you're also having to pay then 4% broadly for everything that you buy. So it's a big problem, because you don't really feel that 4% yourself. I mean, people complain to say, well, I've been out shopping today and it's a lot more money, and et cetera, et cetera. So and there's not really any mitigation you can do, because obviously those personal allowances aren't going to rise. But I mean, overall, I think it's just the case that a lot of people are just pretty fed up of that not moving up, and it's stopping people really trying to do more hours, and work a bit harder, because you're just going to all you're doing is paying more tax all the time.
It was a a clever way of the government to do it, wasn't it? Really,
Yeah.
because they're saying, look, we're sticking to the manifesto. We're not increasing income tax, but we're going to give you a wage increase, so it means that you're paying more tax anyway.
Yeah, well, people believe it. That's
yeah.
the problem. But I mean, in a way, it's a bit ridiculous because, like, you've got young kids. I've got a grandchild, and I would be happy to pay more tax, but it's just a political football that they won't want to kick because, like they've said, they for whatever ridiculous reason they put that in the manifesto. You know, we're not going to raise taxes for working people. But they should have done. I mean, most people of our age, or my generation and yours, a bit lower. You know, if they said to me, "Look, can you pay 25% tax for a bit, and we'll try and balance the books a bit, so it's not a huge burden on your kids," I think most people will do it. So they're not even. I'm not saying they're dishonest, but they're not honest decisions because if they were honest about it, they would just say, "Yeah, we've got to pay the tax." I mean, they're borrowing. If you look at it realistically, it's absolutely. The numbers just don't add up. I mean, they're taking. I mean, our GDP at the moment is about £4 trillion, and they take in 25% of that. So the government income is £1 trillion a year. Lovely. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and they can't run a country on that. And the worst part about it after that is they're borrowing another 200 billion on top of the trillion, roughly a year. The Labour government's blaming everything else. It was COVID, but. You know, the numbers don't add up, do they?
You can see why people are getting frustrated, you know, and people, you know, they read the average person on the street, so many billions have gone to Ukraine, you know, these benefits are going out, these immigrants are coming, and you can see why people are there's so much uproar because people are paying these taxes, but they're not getting any benefit for these taxes. No. I don't think, as I said before, I don't think people have got a problem with paying taxes, you know. It's good to pay taxes. It shows that you're doing well. But what are those taxes getting used for? Are you getting a benefit from that? Is the NHS improving? Is your livelihood improving? Crime rates are going up. So that's what people are in uproar about.
Well, I mean, that's a good point because that's really the problem. People don't really see. People don't mind paying taxes, and people don't mind paying more tax, in my opinion, because for that reason, especially if they've got kids, they don't want the burden on the next generation, which is fair comment. But like you say, if they're spending £1.2 trillion and they can't get it right, where are we going to go with it? It's just it doesn't actually get us any. So they don't see any value for money out of it all. But the main issues is there's a massive deflection onto immigration. So, for example, for every pound that we pay in tax, 50p of that is spent on immigration. 10p of it is just spent on repaying debt. So the government's very happy for reform.
So I wasn't aware of that. So like 50% goes on.
50p, nothing, next to nothing goes on immigration in real terms.
Okay.
So if you give them a pound, 50p goes on immigration, and then the other 95p gets
5p goes on immigration.
Only 5p on immigration.
Yeah.
10p of it is just wasted on repaying debt, and then the bulk of it then 25p's NHS, 30p on pensions, etc. But the worst part about our tax situation is that 10% is just is thrown away, repaying the debts. Mm-hmm. That's what we should be in uproar about. So what's actually happening is the government's quite happy for the Reform and Conservatives to focus on immigration, because it realistically
it's deflecting from them.
It deflects from what we should be marching on Parliament about, which is, well, why have you created all this debt? Why is it so expensive? You know, it's just, why are you spending 25% of that £1 trillion on NHS and the services are appalling? So how can you spend 250 billion and not be able to see a GP?
10% is massive.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then the other thing, I mean, the triple lock is ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've only got 7 years to go, but it's great for me. I'm going to be on nearly 14 grand a year at 67.
Talk to us about, I know we digress a little bit, but talk to me about the triple lock, for our listeners who are probably not aware about the pension triple lock, and in all layman's terms, for our listeners to understand.
Well, basically, the triple lock means that
it's branded about all the time.
Yeah. I mean, David Cameron brought that in. I can't remember the exact figures, but realistically, at the moment, this year pension's gone up by 4% because it's done on average wages or inflation. So whatever happens, because inflation is so high at the moment, pension schemes, the state pension over the last 4 years, or just post-COVID, it has gone up dramatically. But it's billions. It's costing. I think it was an extra 4 billion this year just in pensions. But they just don't want to upset that apple cart again because they don't. Pensioners are seen as these frail people. I mean, not being disrespectful to my clients, but I mean most of them don't even need the state pension, but they won't, upset that situation because they want the pensioners to be happy because it deflects everybody else again. But it costs. I mean, 30p out of every pound roughly that we pay in tax is just state pension.
It's this isn't obviously a political podcast, but it's wrapped up with the budget. But I was speaking to a friend. One of the main things that was stood out with whether it's Conservative come in or Labour, and then even the members who change within the same parties, is that it's a short-term approach. It's just for votes. Whereas if you go to I spent a lot of time in Dubai, and if you look at countries who are progressing, they have a long-term strategy of 25, 30 years, and they stick to that. Whereas like someone will come in, whether it be Conservative or Labour or a change of a Prime Minister, and they'll do it for votes. They'll have a short-term, can I win the next election? That is their main aim, not how I can improve the country in 25, 30 years and have that long-term vision which everyone buys into. Because, imagine if you run like a business and you've got the MD every 5 years changing, and they're changing the strategy. We're going to go for this direction. No, we're going to go for this. We're going to invest in this. We're going to take from this. The staff are going to get pissed off with that. And the same thing that's happening in our, the political sector now.
Well, that's a good point. But I mean, the major sort of the big, I mean, apart from things like Brexit, where we go back to that, where he just decided let's have a vote. I mean, he didn't have to have a vote, and we should have never come out of Europe. But that's a different. But that's a
separate podcast altogether.
Yeah, we've got time for that one. But I mean, broadly, when you look at now in 2025, that's absolutely true. I mean, a lot of these MPs just come in. To them, it's just a 5-year job or 10-year job. I mean, we've just seen Rishi Sunak, the same kind of thing. He's come in and
he made millions
out of it. Yeah. I mean, the amount of money that guy wasted, and he should be, locked up. I mean, it was like Eat Out. Do you remember that Eat Out, Help Out? I mean, it was billions spent on that.
Our restaurants
I was in Chester at the time, loved it. I was on holiday. Saved me a fortune. It was ridiculous. I could have paid full whack.
Yeah.
But and the furlough system as well. I mean, the amount of money that was wasted on that. We all got furloughed.
Bounce back loans, furloughs.
It was absolutely anyway. So they make these decisions, and it costs us billions, and that goes back to then we have to that 10% figure. 100 billion years paid on debt. But no one's going to go back to him and say, well, you need to give us the money back. But broadly, what I would say in response to that is that most of the big macro facts, the big macro decisions are still made by the Bank of England, which is why they did remove the Bank of England from, or why that's a separate entity and not political, technically. Things like inflation, interest rates, and some of the way that they borrow money. And we saw with Liz Truss, if you average get a politician come in and say, sort of like Jeremy Corbyn, we're going to borrow £1 trillion and nationalise everything. That would never happen because the Bank of England would step in and say that's not really going to work out.
But going back to that, it does seem very political, as if we look at the changes that Labour have made and who they're affecting pensioners mainly, all the winter fuel and everything what they've taken away, and pensions because generally pensioners or people of that age are not Labour voters. Then look at what they've done in the inheritance tax for the farmers. Farmers are not Labour voters, so the guys that they've gone after for are people that they're not going to get votes from anyway.
Correct.
So it is that saying. It's not that they're looking to recoup more tax, because one of the things that I've seen myself on a day-to-day basis, they've increased capital gains tax of when people sell their properties. So they increased capital gain tax, and they were supposed to recoup more money from that, more taxes from that. I've seen less people selling the properties. So I don't know the full stats, but I read they're actually receiving less money from capital gains tax now when they've increased the rates than when they were lower rates.
I think they did initially. The figures I've saw recently, the tax take for capital gains is definitely gone up, because what happens is when they change the rules, people will stall selling. Because if I said to you capital gains tax is 50%, you probably wouldn't sell for a bit, because you've got that sting of what's happened there. But what happens is over time, 6 to 12 months, people have to sell, most of them anyway, if they want to liquidate property assets, etc. So the curve kind of goes flat down a little bit, and then it does rise quite dramatically. I mean, it has definitely, the tax take on capital gains tax has gone up. But I mean, capital gains tax, I don't know why people really, just to cover those two off, I mean, capital gains tax is, I don't know why people, and we have this all the time, don't we? They complain about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, I'm not decrying their complaint. But if they've got to pay 28% of, a big gain, that really they haven't done any work toward, they should say, well, okay, let's live with it. We'll pay the capital gains tax and I'll take my money and be reasonably happy with it. I think that going back to the start of the podcast, I think it's worse where you're actually like us having to work. So like next year now, we're going to have to work a lot hard, just as hard, and give them 2.25% more for nothing. So, but I mean, broadly, it's the same with inheritance tax. We get that every single day, don't we, about inheritance tax? I'm worried about, inheritance tax, you're dead. I always tell my clients, you're dead. You're not going to worry about it, but you haven't got to pay it. Oh, well, I want my, my sons and daughters, well, give them the money now then. No, I'm not giving them the money now. Well,
That's what I said to my clients. I say, if you're so worried about it, the earlier you give it, the better it
is.
No, I'm not as blunt as you. Yeah. So, but
this is what you get. I don't want them to have to pay all that tax.
I think that coming to the property with CGT, I don't want to labour on that point too much, but the gripe is from the clients that a lot of them are not, they have property, but they're not rich or have rich in cash flow, and they have assets. So they'll save up their money that they've got from their job, which they've paid PAYE tax on, to buy a property, an additional property. They pay stamp duty on that additional 3% or 5%, depending on the value of the property. Then they're getting taxed on that, because a lot of the properties are in their personal name. They only can offset 20% of their interest, so they're paying tax on it. Then they've got all the issues with the tenant, and if it's an agent. Okay, so they decide to do that. It's an asset for them. Then say for whatever reason, it might be that the property becomes devalued, or they've got some other issues, or they want to release some cash, they don't want to remortgage, or generally they've got a headache, they don't want to deal with the tenant anymore. They want to sell that property, and then they pay the CGT again. So that, I think the gripe is that at each element that they're paying, the tax is harder. But at the end of the day, like I say, it's an asset, and they are getting some benefit long term from it.
Well, yeah, I mean, capital gains tax is like a tax that goes back, I don't know, probably till like 1,000 years, a few hundred years at least. Capital gains tax. I think it was the 60s it came in. I think. So it was never really there, because people didn't own multiple properties. So what we've seen, my experience from 2002, 2003, when buy-to-let mortgages first came out, people just went off, and capital gains tax the rates weren't too bad, the stamp duty was low, and it all worked out.
You could borrow 105%.
Yeah, you could borrow you just signed what you wanted to borrow. There was no credit checks back in the day. We used to have a mortgage, the GMAC Unlimited it was called. That was one of those famous mortgages where it was just signed, and you could have unlimited. It was called unlimited because you could have unlimited defaults, unlimited credit defaults, etc. So unlimited CCJs, as long as it wasn't bankrupt, you could get a mortgage. But anyway, in 2003, when the buy-to-let emerged or started, it wasn't such of a burden. So the problem you've got now in terms of our clients is they've either got big portfolios that they can't do anything with because they're all outside of company structures. So what we're finding now is definitely when we get clients come now who are looking to buy property or have got small portfolios, He's thinking about the structure of it, because what used to happen was, I need a mortgage. There's my mortgage. I've put my deposit down, and I'm off and running on my buy-to-let portfolio, which was, I mean, you wouldn't do that today. I mean, you definitely want to look at either family investment company structures, so the gain is all outside of your shareholdings. So you've got to think more now, even more so now, on everything about how you're going to structure your investments rather than what we see every day. Well, it's in my name.
So we've mentioned the property clients. Again, the budget, the stamp duty. We mentioned capital gains tax, but in this budget again, the landlords have been attacked, or they feel like they're attacked. Another
2%.
Another 2% on income. So if in the basic rate band, it's going from 20 to 22. The higher band from 40 to 42, and the additional rate band from 45 to 47.5%. Not only on to landlords, but I feel that all these guys that had, I'm putting my property in my limited company, for them to withdraw their funds out from the limited company now, they're going to have to pay another 2% as well through dividends. So dividends have gone from 8.75 to 10.75, from 33.75 to 35.75%. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we told most of our big property portfolio clients 5 years ago to divest out of it.
What you told them to?
We told them to come out of it, because we could see. I mean, there's two parts to it really. One is the regulatory issue, which is obviously was strengthened again in the budget, well, not in the budget, but recently with no fault evictions. So it really makes most buy-to-let property very illiquid, because it can take so long now to get the tenant to move out.
So was that illiquid?
Sorry, illiquid. Yeah. So it really makes it an issue. As long as you're going to hold them long term, but you never want to actually sell them, it's fine. But you've also got the regulations around buy-to-lets, which a lot of our clients just didn't want to get involved in, which we saw recently with our Chancellor, who decided not to apply for the licence.
And blame the solicitors as always.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a client at the moment. It's a 25 grand fine. It's not small if you just don't do it for a long time. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff in there our clients who really want to get involved in. But the main thing was we could see that the tax rates would become punitive, where it just becomes. Is it really worth it? And if you're going to continually get clobbered on capital gains tax again, where most clients don't really make too much money off the income because they've got mortgages against it, plus the tax.
It's the equity increase, isn't it?
Yeah, they're looking for equity increase. Well, that equity increase has slowed anyway, especially over the last 5 years. So we didn't twist their arm to do it, but they were saying, well, what's your view on it? And we really said to them, well, don't go and sell up tomorrow, but you want to divest slowly while capital gains tax was reasonably low. And I mean, I haven't had any complaints back from any of our 20, 30 clients we advised, because they said, well, yeah, I'm glad I did it now, because at least I sold at reasonable rates. So, but again, it comes down to the structures of, if you can get it, property into limited companies, you've got 25. I mean, that was another sneaky thing they did in the Conservative budget, was all property companies have got to pay 25% tax. So yeah, I mean, you've got 25% corp tax, and you've got, as you say, 10.25 dividends. That's not usually an issue with most clients, because they don't withdraw it anyway. They'll either reinvest it back into another property. So I think again, it's just really. Limited companies still, in my opinion, better, because you have only got the 25% corp tax, and that can be manipulated, as we know anyway, because it's a tax on profits. It's not a straightforward tax. So again, if you structure it properly in the company, whereby you're reducing that corp tax burden by either improving the properties or spending some money.
Or they could pay into a pension from
their
limited
schemes.
company. Yeah,
you can do all sorts of things. Corp tax is very, it's probably one of the best tax you can manipulate out of all of them, because you can do things before you have to pay it. With PAYE, it's PAYE. So, but broadly, you've really got to think about whether it's in the long term. I mean, most of the clients that I've retained, where they've got kids involved, So you've got dad and mom who've got some property portfolios into a limited company, and the idea is then is to pass that on to the kids. Unfortunately, that's all going to get dragged in 2027. That's another big issue, because that's all in back in inheritance. Well, it was always in inheritance tax. So again, the government's doing everything they can. What the government really wants is for farmers to sell land. That's number one, because the problem you've got with all farmland is it's usually passed on to generation after generation after generation. It never comes on the market. I don't know if you got farming clients, but my farming clients, they don't sell land. They never want to sell it. And the problem is, unless they start to release some of that land, they can't build. End of story. Even if they were to say, we'll build on anywhere we want, it's still not available. So, in my opinion, a lot of that 2027 loss of agricultural property relief is based on the government trying to release, large blocks of land
to build on.
Mm-hmm. I think it's not all about taxing farmers. Mm-hmm. So that's I think that's what they're trying to do in respect to that.
No, I totally get that. My family in India, farming background, and selling the land is very, it's not.
It's like losing an arm. They
Yeah.
won't do it. They just won't do it. I mean, it's not in them.
It's been in the family. It's in the in the bloodline for so long. So
and they don't get much for it, because you're only looking realistically. If you want to go and buy an acre of land and all you're going to do is put a horse on it, it's $4 or $5 grand an acre. You can't get much for it. So the reason it's never sold is that farmers think, well, it's just not worth me selling all that land, because I'm not going to get too much for it. I might as well just hang on to it.
I was going to discuss this point later on down the line, but we're talking about property. We're talking about the budget. Let's have the conversation that we get asked on a day-to-day basis. So I've got a property in my personal name, and my mate John down the pub has told me to put it stick it in a limited company. Or normally, I'll put it in a limited company already. I've got the stamp duty letter now to pay. So I weren't told about the stamp duty.
Yeah, I went on Mum's net, and they said on there it wasn't a problem.
Yeah. So
we get that. We get less of it now, because I think it's kind of that wave has kind of petered out a bit. But we get over the past 2-3 years, we've got umpteen clients who said, well, I don't understand that. I gave I did a deal with my uncle, and I've given him the property back, or we've put the property in a limited company. What's all this about?
Paying stamp duty again, capital gains.
Duty,
I didn't make no money.
I didn't make any money. I didn't even sold it. This is all wrong, And I've read online, and there's a barrister. You pay him $7 grand, and he says it's all fine. So. I can't remember who that was. Was it property?
It was 118.
118. Yeah. So
we do joke about this, but we mean you. Before COVID, we read all the legislation then, because people were saying, look, I won't mention any names. There was these guys, and they were offering these schemes for £7,000 to £10,000. A lot of my clients were interested in them, and some of them went with them. I was like, if you guys want to go with that, but it's a grey area. It depends on your risk appetite. I wouldn't advise it after we spoke about it. And recently, about 6 months ago, 12 months ago, it was in the paper, and one person came back to me, didn't they? And I sent it to you, and they had like a massive 30, 40 grand liability to pay.
They wrote to Property 118 and said to them, you've got to go and write to all your clients, and they've got to put a code on their tax returns to say that they're in that scheme.
Yeah.
So, that was I think that's still going through the courts anyway. That was just a demarcation between the legal owner, because the problem in the UK law, it does get very confusing, because you've got the legal owner and the beneficial owner. So the legal owner is just responsible for the regulatory aspects of the property. So if you own a property, then you've got to abide by the regulatory rules around that property and pay the bills on that property, or anything in law around it. But the beneficial owner is really the person who's actually got the income and the capital if it's sold. So it does become confusing. But broadly, the bit that gets always amazes me is that clients generally, not our clients, will not say this, our clients, think that HMRC are just like, they don't know anything.
Yeah.
And it's that's the point that, so if you're doing any sort of tax planning, the first thing is to realise that HMRC aren't fools. And they know exactly what people are doing.
Especially with everything being digital now. They look at land registry.
Yeah.
They know if you sold a property or you required a property or what money is going into your bank account.
Yeah. So when they say, well, John the plumber says you don't need to pay stamp duty, well, what do you think HMRC are just sitting there going, no, you don't have to, because they know what's going on. So you've got, firstly off, HMRC aren't stupid. You can't just read an article and say, well, that sounds all right, because it's not true. And you've got it. So the first thing is HMRC know what's going on. The second issue you've got to bear in mind if you're doing any tax planning vehicles or any more grey area vehicle or process is the GAR, which is the General Anti-Abuse Rule. And those rules simply say, if you do something, anything, and the only outcome is that you pay less tax, then you've evaded tax. That's it. So if you do anything, and that the GAR's there for that reason, because HMRC got fed up of going to court, so they just brought out the GAR rules and said, if it looks like a pig and smells like a pig, then it's a pig, and we will want our money, which is exactly what they do.
Yeah. So, guys, just on that to clarify that, if you are looking to move your property into a limited company, obviously each situation is different, case by case basis. But generally, if you've got a property and you're moving to a limited company, you will pay stamp duty and you will pay capital gain tax. If you hold the property for 10 years and it's increased in 100k, you're going to pay capital gains tax on moving it into a limited company. Even though you argue with me and you say, oh, that's a separate entity to myself, in HMRC's eyes, you've sold that to a third party, regardless if you're the director or not. So stamp duty and CGT would be applicable. Yeah, I get asked about these, again, wonderful schemes, and we've ran them past together and read the guidance, and you keep me updated as well about, I think, the recent case where everyone was putting them into a partnership first for a couple of years for rollover relief and then moving into a limited company. And I was reading some guidance again that actually fell down the line of something. Yeah.
Well, the main issues is that there is incorporation relief available for everybody. So if you've got start a little plumbing business and that business becomes bigger, then HMRC allow you to actually put that plumbing business into the limited company without incurring capital gains tax.
It's a trade.
Because that's a fairness thing, an equity thing, because obviously the guys would say, well, look, why have we got to pay a big CGT bill when we just want to go? So that's the reason for incorporation relief. It's to help companies that grow to incorporate. That's what it's there for.
I done that many years myself, because I started off as a sole trader, and then things were going well many years ago. I moved that into a limited company.
Yeah. So if you just do that one first, where we've got a trading business, because the main issue is between HMRC, there isn't an absolute definition of trading business, but most people can figure it out what a trading business is, as opposed to a property portfolio business. So if you've got a trading business like that, however, if that plumber or that plumbing company outside of LTD had got £1 million property that was used in the business, and they want to incorporate, they've got to pay stamp duty on that £1 million property going into the LTD. However, the stamp duty rates for commercial are nowhere near, I don't know them off the top of my head, but they're nowhere near as bad as normal property. So number one is, if you're a trading business and you've got a property and you want to incorporate, then it's up to you to say, well, do I want to put the property in there because I've got to pay stamp duty? You would be realistically pretty ridiculous for you to put that property that's in your name into that LTD, because you're dragging that company. You're dragging that property into the company, and if the company has problems, that's going to be open, for that to be in bankruptcy. You would never do it, which is why we have this incorporation rule. Incorporate, not a problem. Got a property. HMRC would say, well, I don't know why you'd want to put that in there. Yeah. So that's more or less how it works. The only anomaly to that is if you've got a partnership. So if you've got two plumbers, then they could put the property into the LTD without paying stamp duty, because you get partnership relief as well as incorporation relief.
That's what I was alluding to, that bit.
Yeah.
Isn't it for 2 years that they have to stick it in the partnership though, before they can move it? It's like people move it into the partnership and then the next day they move it into the limited company.
Which is then the HMRC would just say, well, you've flaunted the GAR rules, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
That's why they're there. So that's going back sort of the past 100 years, if we say, that was set up to help companies go into limited companies, and HMRC would normally deem, well, we don't need to worry about the stamp duty, because most people or most businesses won't want to put property in there because they won't want it entwined in the LTD. They usually have it holding a holding company. Anyway, so that's more or less how it works. So what's happened is over the past 10 years where we've had problem where we've got, well, I need to put my properties into a limited company, is that they've then gone out and said, well, incorporation relief's available. It's not available because you're not a trading company. So you can't roll the CGT in, and you're definitely going to pay stamp duty. And even if you're a partnership, it's still dubious as to whether, that stamp duty or that SDLT relief is available. So most of the schemes, just to finish that part off, most of the schemes like Property 118 and most of the schemes that we saw or are still available today, is where they are going back to what I was saying before, they move the beneficial ownership into the LTD, and the legal ownership is still retained where it is. The problem you've got with that is it's still open to capital gains tax and stamp duty, arguably, but there's no HMRC rules on moving beneficial ownership. So you get, at the end of the day, my advice is pretty straightforward. You can go and get what we call non-statutory clearance, which is what we do with all our clients. If they say, I've got 4 properties, some of them are commercial, one's a flat, then just write to HMRC and say, this is the situation, can I claim incorporation relief and partnership relief?
Yeah, guys, just on that, so if you're looking to move properties over, or you've got issues about stamp duty, capital gains tax, you can reach out to me, Kully Tax, and I can put you in touch with Richard, for a consultation. And but yeah, to summarise, there's no easy way of avoiding stamp duty or limiting tax liabilities for property.
To finish that, it's even worse now, because we were talking about this the other week, where the land registry is obviously a huge, massive database. And HMRC don't really know. They do, we've seen it before, where they'll pick up multiple transactions and you'll get a letter to say, what's happened here? We don't seem to have any tax, which we've seen all the time, right?
So the property let campaigns at the moment, I'm so busy with those. If any of you guys have received any letters from HMRC and you're not undisclosed tax for various reasons, normally you forgot that you had to pay tax on the property income. Don't know why.
Well, you can refer to John in the pub.
That's it. Yeah, John told you not to pay any tax.
John told me I didn't have to pay.
So all jokes aside, that buy-to-let property amnesty, the property let campaign, that was going to run for 1 year. It was an amnesty that you go to HMRC and say, look, I've not declared any income tax on my properties, but I hold my hand up now and I want to declare it. I'm coming to you rather you come to us. HMRC would give you lower rates of penalties, interest, and you could get your records in. But HMRC made so much money from that amnesty, they've just kept it open now. And my clients are receiving so many letters. It's because the estate agents are the ones that are getting audited. They're going down the list and saying, we've got Mr. Smith or Mr. Singh over here. He's been your client for 10 years. However, he's never done a tax return. Let's go and send him a letter, and that's what's happening.
Well, I think I think it will get a lot worse over the next 5 to 10 years, because they'll be able to run. I mean, this is why they want digital tax, because they can run AI all through it, and they'll definitely start to run AI through the land registry databases, and it will just say, well, there's 3 transactions there, and then the AI will run back to the capital gains tax, and they'll look at the income, and they'll be able to just bring up a big list of clients where there's been multiple transactions, and HMRC don't seem to have any money.
Well, so now the banks are liable as well, so they're working closely with HMRC than ever. If they see regular payments coming every month, they're informing HMRC.
Yeah,
it's transparent as that.
I mean, I think the days are over pretty much. I think most people realise. I mean, I know that we've been sort of joking about, John down the pub. But I think most people do realise now that you can't put properties into limited companies and not pay anything, and you're better off. We've got clients who've still got 6 or 7 properties, and what we say to them is, well, we'll work out the capital gains tax and we'll work out the stamp duty, and just sell one of them or 2 of them, and then you can use that capital because it's a cost to incorporate the other if you want to retain them. So you're better off putting your hands up. It's worse where we've got clients who've got hundreds of £1,000s worth of bills. Do you really want to?
We see on a daily basis.
Do you want to worry about that on a day? Exactly. So you might as well just pay the tax and sort it out. But like I said before, most clients are definitely selling off large parts of their property portfolios for regulatory and tax reasons.
So what we're referring to there is Section 162, the Ramsey case.
Yeah. Sorry, Ramsey. So Section 162.
How do we forget that?
That's a famous case law that HMRC constantly rely on, and everybody, if you want to put properties into a company and follow follow incorporation relief and partnership relief and don't think you have to pay anything, then read the Ramsey case. So
before you move on, the problem is that even though we're doing this podcast and we're on social media, all these people on TikTok and social media and Instagram, they're liking, oh yeah, you can get away, with this work 20 hours a week on your property and pay no tax. No, that is not right.
No. So it really has to be your full-time job. So we have got clients, quite rightly, who've got 4 commercial properties, but it has to be a mix. Ramsey was not buy-to-let property. Okay. It had some residential in it, but most of it was commercial. So in my opinion, if your portfolio is pure residential property, then you're going to pay the tax. Yeah. However, we have got clients where it's a mix, and it does become confusing. So let's say you've got, especially with commercial property, which Ramsey was. So if you've got 5 shops and then 5 flats above, and you want to incorporate that, that's what Ramsey was about. So HMRC said, no, you can't do that because it's residential. We want our money. And what the court said was, broadly, if it's a full-time job, which it would be, right? If you've got all that property, but it was things like the judge said, well, he took the bins out. He went over there 4 times a week.
Maintenance.
So if it's a legitimate, and again, it's not grey area, is it? If you've got a big commercial site and you've got 4 or 5 shops and 4 or 5 flats, and
it's common sense really, because a lot of our clients have got small buy-to-let property portfolios. They're working full time in their day job. So how can they be doing 40 hours a week?
You flaunted Ramsey straight away. Go and read it if you don't believe me.
Or give up your PAYE job.
Give up your job. But if you've got another income, then you don't fall under the Ramsey. If you've haven't got mixed property portfolio, commercial, residential, you do not come under Ramsey. There is no way, unless you're going to flaunt the GAR rules and flaunt the incorporation and partnership relief and stamp duty rules, that you can put buy-to-let property residential. If that isn't, it doesn't really matter whether you're working or not, because it's got to be mixed commercial. And you can go and I don't know why, but clients will Google for hours and hours to find one article that tells them you're good to go.
ChatGPT.
I've done this and never had a problem. They want to find that rather than just, if you go onto HMRC, HMRC sites say on incorporation, and when you go into, I know it's a bit more difficult to read it, but if you go onto the manual, it says in the manual, if you incorporate, you pay stamp duty. No grey area, you pay stamp duty if you want to claim incorporation.
So if listeners, you want to do that, you got any property questions, you want to do it properly, make sure that HMRC are not going to send you that brown letter in a few months or a few years down the line. Come and speak to me, myself and Richard.
The HMRC's property stamp duty / capital gains tax helpline are great. So you don't.
I disagree.
You don't even.
If you can get through to them, I spend my
true.
whole life on the phone to them.
Yeah. But you can email them. So I can never understand when people say, well, I don't want to decry them asking us for advice. We don't do ourselves out of fees. But, pick the phone up and say, I've got 2 properties. They're both buy to let, and they'll say, no, you can't do that. So, but people think, oh, no, I'm not going to ask the people that might come back to me.
No.
They just want to find a way constantly round, of not sticking around up and saying, unfortunately, this is it. I mean, I understand it.
Just pay your fucking tax.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand it because it's not very fair in the sense that it's your property. You just want to put it into a limited company because it's not always about tax, but it can be you want to put it in a limited company because you want to pass it on to the next generation, and it is really.
We'll come on to that.
But it is unfair. I get why people say I don't really want to. Why have I got to pay all those bills when I've kind of already paid them? Mm-hmm. But I mean, it is what it is because you're just full of. You just.
We could spend all this episode talking about property, but we'll leave that there on the summary of property, and we'll move on to our next topic. So, the budget, the next item on the list, ISAs. One of your favourite topics, Richard.
Yeah.
So from 20,000 to 12,000.
Well, that's cash, though,
but,
right?
Yeah, but if it's stocks and shares, that's still 20k, isn't it?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, if you're using cash ISAs, you're completely wasting your time. It's always been a waste of time, and I totally agree. I mean, to me, they should have just.
So when Richard means cash, he doesn't mean like taking brown paper bags in.
No.
It actually means
ISA.
just
Exactly, we can't do that.
Yeah.
So cash ISAs are really. Are a waste of time. They certainly are now because you've got inflation running at 4% and people are only getting 4%. So their money's actually losing money, but it doesn't feel like it. And we've always said that cash ISA is pointless. I mean, they're okay for what we used to or still call emergency funds. So if you've got a client whose net worth is 150,000, then stuff 20 grand in your cash ISA. Which is what we used to call emergency fund money, but that's the only time you'd use it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we've got just on a normal, pretty 100% equity type fund. I mean, it's done double figures over the last 5 years, 80% over 5 years return. Less inflation. So, I think you should have just, in my opinion, just got rid of them. I mean, you can still do 20 grand if you're over 65. Again, because that's emergency fund planning. Yeah. They didn't want to unwind that. So it's a really good thing. They were initially saying that it was going to be 12 and then you had to put 8 grand in the UK indexes or UK companies. I'm glad she hasn't done that because it's a bit too, looking at investing through that very tight lens. You don't really want to just put it all in UK.
Just on that then, Richard, what did you say? If someone comes to you and say, look, I want to put in 20k.
I'd say it's not enough money. Go to somewhere else.
In my stocks and shares ISAs, we want to manage it. What the averages are they looking at compared to a normal high street, flat 4%? I know you can't. This is not advice, and you can't promise anything.
I looked at them yesterday. We were doing a review yesterday. So our 100% equity fund, which is more or less, 40% US, 20% UK, 20% Europe, and a little bit of emerging market, etc. So I mean that's an 18% in 1 year.
I can actually vouch for this because my pension's with Richard, and it's doing about 20% at the moment. So. Not bad compared to the 4%.
Yeah, I mean, cash ISA's got its place, but in my opinion, only for an emergency fund. Just put it away there, tax free. You're not going to get any growth on it, and I think that's what she was trying to encourage. Our regulators the same. The FCA, the Bank of England, and the government are all want their individuals to invest in the stock markets because you're wasting your time doing anything else. That's the bottom line. I mean, not to plug ourselves, but I mean, we've took off all initial charges, so there's no initial charges. Going back to a client comes in with 20 grand. If you went to St James's Place, if they wanted to take that amount of money, probably unlikely. I mean, they'll charge you 3% initial charge, so you've gone back 3%. So what we've done recently over the past year is just take all our initial charges off. So you give me the 20 grand, it goes in clean. and we're finding clients who, you know, the amount of money that we're getting in now, you know, is quadrupled because of the no initial charges. So I'm making that point is that a lot of clients are put off putting the 20 grand in with advice because they'll get charged initial charges. So, but you can still use Hargreaves Lansdown, you know,
many of the
AJ
platforms
Bell,
out there.
Fidelity. You just got to be careful. At the moment, you've got that AI bubble, so you just got to be careful what you're exposing yourself to.
Have you got clients coming to you with weird and wonderful crypto schemes? I hear one every other day. A client come to me, I'm gonna make millions. You know, I've got this next crypto token. I want to invest in that. You know, we do the counts from there for them, but we don't get involved too much. Have you got many people involved?
We get that now and again. Well, they'll say, you know, I've heard this Bitcoin's a good place to put my money. Well, carry on, but you won't be putting it through with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand Bitcoin. I don't see how it goes up and down when there's no underlying value or reason for it to go up and down. So I don't understand it. However, we have got access to, I think it's BlackRock and Vanguard now have got Bitcoin tracker funds. So if you want exposure to Bitcoin without having to actually invest, you know, via those security wallets, then you can literally just buy a Vanguard Bitcoin.
Must be pretty volatile, the graph on those.
Yeah, and you can put your 20 grand in, and then it'll be £1 tomorrow, and then come back up to 3.7 million, and then next week it will be minus whatever. So it's not something
for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not. Well, we can't really advise on it because it's too much of a risk. Because even if we say to clients, you know, you could lose all your money, they'll still come back a week later and say, I've lost all my money and it's your fault. Yeah. So we won't really get involved in it. No. I don't really understand it. I mean, Michael Burry, the guy that he's just shorted all Nvidia, and he was the guy in 08 who shorted all the Big houses. Short. You know, very famous film about it. I can't remember it.
Big Short.
So the Big Short. That's it. So I mean, he's just said Bitcoin's worthless. He doesn't. It is. So
he just put a massive short on all the stocks at the moment, hasn't he?
Yeah. So I mean, they have come down. I mean, they are. That's the problem you've got with investing at the moment. Is that if you put £1 into the US index, S&P 500, then 35p of that pound will go in 7 companies, and only the rest of it. It's not spread across because the index is so badly weighted at the moment that you end up with Nvidia, Alphabet, Google, Microsoft. So you've got to be careful that you're not exposing yourself too much to that index.
No, cheers. Thank you very much for that insight. And another topic on the budget, we'll stick on that for a moment, is the child benefit cap for, you know, the removal of, you know, from having 2 children to, you know, unlimited. Seems no real value in that. It seems more of a political agenda than anything else.
Well, again, that's really to mitigate the left in the Labour Party. I mean,
with after Keir Starmer, or that was badgering Keir Starmer about it, to change something on it.
Well, I can't remember when it came out. It was a Conservative policy to put it back to 2 people. I can't remember when it was, 2015, 2017 maybe. And there was a massive uproar from the Labour Party when they did it, and they all promised to reverse it and we'll send it back. And, you know, if we get into power, we'll look at it. That all got watered down into, well, you know, we'll look at it now. So realistically, it really is just, again, going back to that political football, that she wants the budget to be voted through. So to get the budget voted through, one of the things was that, you know, she would reinstate or take the 2-child cap off it. I mean, from my perspective, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but, you know, the kids didn't have to be born.
Yeah.
So if there's more money technically going to the household, I know there's a big argument to say, well, it's given to the parents, and that doesn't mean to say that it'll filter down to the kids, etc., etc. But the politicians don't care about that.
Well, this is what I spoke to you offline about, is that, you know, I've done a short video previously. If the parents are so irresponsible of having another kid when they can't afford, after they've had 2 already, there's no guarantee that income that they receive is going to go to the kid, because it shows that they're responsible.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of a cultural thing, as we were saying in the car driving over here. It's just, you know, certain cultures, you know, want to have more kids, and good luck to them. Whereas certainly white folk or white people, to we use that phrase, are probably going backwards. Or certainly are going backwards. But again, it comes back to what we were just saying. You know, generally, is that we do need the birth rate to go up. So maybe that's why her argument. We are in negative birth rate at the moment.
Why do we need the birth rate to go up?
Because we're going to run out of people. If people aren't going to have kids,
We'll have robots soon.
Huh?
We'll have robots soon.
Yeah, we'll have robots. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
Well, I mean, the problem you've got with the UK is that I can't. I mean, I don't know what the exact figures are, but it's like 35% of the people in the UK are over 60, and they will die eventually, and that 35% won't be replaced at the moment. So, in other words, if we go 50 years on, there'll be a lot less people because we haven't replaced all those old people that are going to die. So, I mean, going back to what we were saying, it's going to cost 3.6 billion to reinstate the no child cap. What do we care? 3.6 billion out of $1 trillion. When we're paying 100 billion in repayments for debt. So, but my own view really is it's just to placate the left in the Labour Party.
You don't like this debt repayment, do you?
Well, I think it's just something that no one talks about, no one's bothered about. I mean, the banks and all the big, large institutions, BlackRock and Vanguard, and all the bank institutions, or most of the banking institutions, have just sold off all of their 30-year gilt holdings. So that a 30-year gilt holding is a debt that's going to be repaid in 30 years. And the 30-year gilt yield has just dropped because they've sold it off. And the reason they've sold, because the government has to buy it back technically. And the reason they've sold it is, and they've been blatant about it, because they don't think the UK government's going to be able to repay it.
It's the government bond, isn't it?
The government bond. So if you've got where institutions are flogging it, getting rid of their long-term UK debt because they don't think the UK is going to be able to sustain paying that money back. But we're not talking about that. So the 10% that we pay in debt repayment is just crippling us.
Talk to us about then, the inheritance tax changes on a business agricultural relief. Was it the first after the first million, 50%?
Yeah, well, and business property relief, which is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, people. Thankfully, I think, as we've said before, if we do business property relief first, I mean, most companies haven't got much on their balance sheets. They might be very profitable in terms of taking dividends out and providing a good income, but broadly, most of them haven't got much assets on the balance sheet.
This is if they sold their business.
Yeah. So if you've got. It will come down to the valuations, but
business asset disposal relief.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got most companies, let's say even if they're turning £1 million over and they're making a couple of 100,000 and they haven't got any assets, that company's not really worth that much money.
Okay.
We don't really know. I think the grey area is going to be is how HMRC are going to value that in terms of business property relief. If it's worth whether they're going to use multipliers. We're yet to see that.
I think what I've seen, I work with a few valuation companies that they'll do a stripped down EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, and then after that put a multiple on, maybe about 3-4 times, and that's the value that the business is. And you have to get some kind of third party valuation done of the business. You can't just do it yourself and think that.
Well, I think it's going to be difficult because I think that's why they're not particularly focusing on. Or people aren't complaining too much about business property relief of trading companies, because how are you going to value it? You can cover it with insurance, business insurance as well, if there was a bill. But what you would do as you got older, I mean, most limited companies don't, the owners don't die with the business. They're more or less, that business is gone before they start to enter into that kind of retirement phase. So with broadly, anybody who's got big assets in a company, which would mean they've got commercial property in there they're working from or whatever, then they need to review their situation of how they might handle the loss of BPR, definitely. But there's not that many of those. Most of our clients don't particularly need to, I mean, I don't need to worry about it. I think the assets on my company are like 37 quid because we've got, it's all been written off anyway.
I've got a few clients who are, would be affected by this, who would potentially looking to sell their business. And one of the things that was changed, I just want to clarify on this budget, was I thought that was always the case, that if they give it to their spouse, there's no tax liability.
Correct, that's still there.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think if you're going to have, if you're in partnership with the directors, and I think it's going to be difficult to work it all out. But I think, like I said, I don't think the government's not. I don't think they're going to drag too many people in on pure trading companies with BPR, because most of them haven't got much assets. But it definitely, everybody will need to review it. It's like everything. No one's going to do anything until 2027, until all the rules come in. I mean, the APR. The problem with APR is the asset is there. It's not. It's a problem that's there. So APR is definitely more of an issue than BPR, because they're going to have to. They can't get rid of the asset, can they? Technically, anyway.
Yeah. So the business asset disposal relief is supposed to incentivise investment in the business. So when you sell the business, you pay a lower capital gains tax. That's the whole point of it, which is been increased to 14%. So I think that was the reason that they wanted people to invest in the business to grow it, and now these over £1 million. Is it £1 million threshold? I think.
Yeah.
And now anything over that, if they sold the business, they'll be paying 14% CGT.
I mean, again, we see one of the problems we do see all the time is where. Not knocking accountants, because I'm sat by one, but where you've got, I want to pack up and I've got 400 grand in the bank because they've got retained earnings. How do I get rid of it? Well, you should have took it out over the past 20 years, because they're not. I mean, we see that an awful lot where they don't maximise their. They don't want to pay too much tax, so they'll just take 30 grand out, 35,000. It's really important that if you've got cash in the accounts that you can take up to the basic rate threshold, just take it out. Pay the now 10.25 and take it out.
Because cash boxing is frowned upon by HMRC. Also, cash boxing is when clients leave the money in the business, and what they're going to do is they're going to do a voluntary liquidation at the end, and they'll pay, claim back in the day 10% entrepreneurs relief, and instead of paying, wherever their dividends tax rates are, taking the high rates, they'll only pay 10%, get entrepreneurs relief. So that's
you can still do that. Yeah. We've seen that quite a lot. HMRC don't at the moment have an issue with it. So if you've got £1 million in cash, which is retained earnings, and then you've got £1 million worth of assets, you can literally sell it for £2 million, sell it with the cash, and then only pay what was 10%. I don't know what it is now, but entrepreneurs
14%.
Yeah. So 14%. So we do still see that a lot, and HMRC don't seem to have too much of a problem with it.
Then you'll end up paying the liquidator a pretty penny as well.
Yeah. I mean, liquidating businesses is not an easy. You never want to get involved in that. I mean, just. But it all comes down to, like we've just been saying, which is easy for us to say now, but is really it's the same with buy-to-lets. Is that people are busy and they don't look at the structures, they don't have any long-term planning, they don't look at their business and what they can do in the future to mitigate all these issues. We have clients now who come in who think, when I say to them, when you're thinking of retiring, and I'll say 10 years' time. And I said, well, let's put a plan together. So you're not got a load of cash stuffed in the business you're going to have problems with, or we could remove assets now that you can retain and rent back outside of the limited company if you wanted to just, have commercial property. So it's really important, you have that longer view on your business, and we can certainly help with that. It's one of the things that we do that our clients really like, because we'll look long term to say, well, where do you want to be, and what can we do to mitigate tax? When you rock up with £1 million in the bank and you've got a problem.
I totally get your point about the general day-to-day accountants or bedroom accountants not looking at the accounts. Their job is complete the tax returns, it reconciles, send it. What we've started to do at year end, as you're aware, worked with you on our post year-end questionnaire, we've got a list of questions that we'll go through the client with a checklist and say, okay, you've got funds in your business over a certain level. Do you want to speak to a financial advisor, work with us? You can either put into, we can't give advice, but we can give them some, high level options. Do you want to put into pension? You can pay relevant life cover insurance from here. You can add your missus on as a shareholder. We'll do some tax planning at the year end and go through a questionnaire, because if you're not asking the client the question, how do you know? Their mortgage might be up and you can refer them to someone to get release some equity. But a lot of accountants are not interested in this.
No.
They think my job finishes up because I've done the year-end accounts, that's my job done. But it goes beyond that, because you've got a relationship with the client.
Yeah, well, again, it's a bit cliche, but if I had £1 for every time, I heard, well, my accountant hasn't mentioned this, it's absolutely true. I mean, I'm not decrying, because some accountants will set out their stall. That's what they do. They do your accounts and they'll look after your tax, and that's all they do. They're not interested in offering, well, they will offer those services, but they tend to offer it either in-house and refer, or they just don't do it at all. But most small-ish accountants that most smallish limited companies come across, and that's, I'm not being negative or decrying them. That's what they do. They don't propose to do anything else. So yeah, I mean, we get all the time, well, my accountant's never told me about, not you, I would add, my accountant's never told me to put stuff in pension schemes. My accountant's never told me to look at a long-term plan. My accountant's never told me to make sure I take all my dividends out. Like you say, my accountant's never told me to put my wife on.
You made a really important there. So obviously, maybe it's a time thing, but we do it like with accounts. But when we're discussing property, one thing that we work quite closely on, or we've done a few of them, is on the property income, the Form 17, which will be very relevant to a lot of our listeners. So it's normally, without being sexist, it's we do it for a lot of our doctor clients, where the husband, the male, is a higher rate taxpayer, and the wife is looking after the young family. A lot of them have moved down from London or wherever, and they start residing in Birmingham. So they've bought property in Birmingham and they're renting out their property in London, and the property is in joint names. So the husband, or the high partner, he's a consultant, and he's paying higher rates of tax in the 45% tax bracket salary. The wife is not working at the moment, might be going back to work, she's working part-time, and she's got her allowances to use up. So to get a lot of the income into the wife's name, we can do this legally through Form 17.
Correct. But it does, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I should be inundated with Form 17s, but I don't know whether it's because it doesn't sound sexy, and well, I want to put it offshore or in a Dubai trust. That sounds more sexy. But I mean, the majority are probably spousal-owned property. There's probably always the case that Form 17 can help even out. If you, especially like you say, I mean, you've got to have one that's a higher rate taxpayer. But they usually are. I mean, they're both high rate taxpayers, you can't do anything.
Yeah, of course. And you can't backdate it either, because people say, I want to go back to 2000 and do this.
Yeah. Well, there's some lawyers in Smethwick where apparently they can backdate it, but as always. But yeah, I mean, it's these smaller, I use the word tricks, but these smaller planning tricks, are really beneficial to clients, and you actually send that to HMRC. So there's no grey area. They won't come back and say, we didn't know you were doing it. You send off a form, the online form with a declaration of trust to alter the beneficial ownership, and job done. And
just for the listeners to understand, generally, one of the partners can say they waiver their right to 90% of the income, so they receive 10%, and the other partner will receive 90% of the income. I think again there's a lot of confusion around it, and a lot of Chinese whispers. Again, we joke about the mate around the pub, but when solicitors don't understand themselves, so when solicitors are doing it, they're charging clients 3, 4, 5 grand to do these simple forms, and we can get them done for
hundreds,
few hundred quid, and the effect's the same, because we're not making it up. We send it to HMRC.
Well, it's there's no grey area there's no GAR in that, or any HMRC grey area, or coulda, shoulda, woulda, because you get so a question will be from a client, well, as we've just discussed, well, you keep telling me I've got to pay CGT and stamp duty. How come I get away with that? Because I'm moving a lot of equity over to my wife. Well, the reason is you get spousal exemption on the capital gains tax, because you can move whatever you want to your spouse or civil partner without paying any capital gains tax. So that's why you don't get that. You don't get any stamp duty because it's done at zero. So again, we get that constant confusion, and without being disrespectful to our local solicitors, they get very confused with it as well. So
I've seen solicitors get stamp duty calculations
we
wrong.
don't have to pay this, we don't have to pay that. And I mean, broadly, not to go too deep into it, if you move equity or sell and have a gain, capital gains tax is on the actual amount that you sold the property for. Stamp duty, if it's zero, so you can't sell something or move equity and not receive any gain, like we were saying before, where we said clients said, well, I haven't received any money. Well, if you haven't received any money, then there's no capital gain. That's not true. It's done at market value compared to the purchase price. Stamp duty is different. Stamp duty is charged on the actual value, and if the value is zero, as in case in Form 17s, you don't pay any.
Yeah, that's the other thing, isn't it? I want to sell property for £1. It's like
yeah, exactly. So I can understand why clients get confused when they look at Form 17s and then they look at other moving equity.
That's why they need to come and speak to an expert like me or you.
Speak to an expert like me. Yeah. But they've usually done it anyway. Yeah. So then it wouldn't be great if we had clients who walked in and said, well, I'm about to do this. They don't. They've either already done it.
A lot of them are not aware of it. So guys, if you're listening and you've got buy-to-let property and you're receiving income, and one of you is in the basic rate band, another in the higher rate band, come and speak to us, reach out, and there's something that we can do to mitigate your tax liability legally.
Exactly, yeah. And like I said, so the great thing of Form 17s is you write to them, so they can't come back and say what did you do. But they never have an issue with it. We've done, hundreds of them, literally. And we've just done one, I think it was 12 properties we moved over. It saved the client, it's over 20,000 quid. It's not a small amount of money they're saving. So, it's definitely something you should look at. And it's not, I think people get put off with the forms, but if you come to us, you don't have to do anything. And when we do a spreadsheet and we just look at the incomes, we just do a simple spreadsheet. This is what you're paying now, and this is what you would pay if we move the equity. And it's literally, a couple of forms sent off to HMRC, sign those, and you don't. The two questions we get the only downside to doing Form 17s is that if you get divorced, then that equity is over on that other side. So if you give all your equity to your wife, so you've got £1 million portfolio and you put 90% over to your missus or civil partner, then the problem you've got is if it did come to a divorce, she owns that 90% legally. You can't say no, it was always 50-50. So that's one thing to bear in mind. I think that's
probably putting a lot of
if you don't get on with your missus, which sometimes we have in meetings, we laugh, but it's true. I'll explain it and I can see the bloke going, I don't think it's for me.
I'd rather pay the tax.
And of course the wife's going, well, what's your problem? Well, yeah, we can probably figure that one out. That's probably the only downside. The other question we get a lot is, well, can I change it back? And the answer is yeah. Well, how many times? As much as you want. Yeah. So you can literally do it from tax year to tax year. If you do the forms on April the 7th, then you can do it for that tax year and then change it back. Going back to, let's say, the higher earner became out of work, then you can, on April the 7th next tax year, change it back. So it's very flexible as well. So yes, definitely anybody who's got buy-to-let properties where there's a disalignment of tax being paid, then definitely look at it.
No, thank you, very useful. Other tax planning tips, we'll move on from the budget. With what we get asked about is, I don't want to go, we've only got a short amount of time spending on this, but trusts, I get asked, all the time. I know I send them to you. I can have a high-level conversation with my clients. I want to mitigate inheritance tax. I want to put my assets into a trust for my kids. Do you want to just give us a little overview?
Well, again, it's the regulations and the tax around trusts now have just made trust planning.
To simplify for listeners, should we start with that? To move a property into a trust or an asset into the trust, it needs to be unencumbered.
Yes.
Yeah. So that means that you
because
can't.
the mortgage company wouldn't allow it. So
exactly.
you've got to pay the mortgage off. The problems you've got with trusts now, which it wasn't all when I started in financial services, it wasn't this way. But to keep it simple, and I apologise to your listeners if some of this is I've got it slightly wrong or I'm not going to explain it properly. But basically, the problem with trust funds is that if you put any asset into a trust fund, which could be cash, property, Rolex watches, whatever you want to put into the trust fund, it's classed as what we call a CLT, which is a chargeable lifetime transfer. So whenever you put something into a trust fund, it creates an immediate charge to inheritance tax. However, most, or all people, should I say, have got the nil rate band, the 325 nil rate band. So what you can, at the moment, if I'd got a £300,000 worth of cash, I could put that £300,000 into a trust fund, and I won't have a chargeable lifetime transfer because I can use my nil rate band.
An additional 175 for property.
No, that's the other problem you get because you can't use the residential nil rate band.
Okay.
It's 325 full stop, regardless. The residential nil rate band isn't applicable to the chargeable lifetime transfers.
But it is for inheritance tax.
Correct.
Okay.
So where you get a client ring up and say, well, I've got £1 million worth of buy-to-let property, it's all encumbered, I want to put it into a trust fund, they can't do it anyway because they can put the first 325 in and then the rest of it would be charged at 20% tax because you'd pay 20% initially chargeable lifetime transfer and then the balance of the 20% will be paid on death if that tax burden was still there. So broadly, you just can forget it. It's not going to work. I mean,
has the rules changed then? Because back in the day, all these lords of the manor and these who have loads of property, they were putting all the properties into trust. It was going down, and on death, that was going on to the next generation.
Correct. So you had in 2005. I mean, I started in financial services in 2001 at Carp Insurance. A client would come along and say, "I've got £3 million. I've just sold my business. I don't want this money hanging around. Can I put it into a trust fund for my kids?" Job done.
Okay.
If you put it, and it was in that they were interest in possession, so it was taxed on the beneficiaries, and it was great. And after 7 years, it came out for inheritance tax. So if you got David Beckham, and we were in 2001, and he wants to do some tax planning, and he says, "I've got 200 million in cash. I don't want to pay all this tax on it." In pre-05, put the 200 million quid as an interest IIP. There'd be no immediate charge to inheritance tax. 7 years it would come out, and then income would be on the beneficiaries, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was fantastic. However, in 01 we had what came in, in 05 we had the relevant property regime come in, which completely usurps all of that. So what that brought in was 325 maximum. Anything you put into a trust fund is a chargeable lifetime transfer. It rolls over after 7 years, so you can use your 325, and then 7 years you can reset your 325. Okay. But the tax burden is on dividends and income was nearly, I don't know whether they changed them in the budget, but they're very punitive. So if you want income drawn off, you've got to pay an awful lot of tax. You can reclaim it if you're a base rate taxpayer, but it's a lot of faff. The other thing is you've got 10-year charges. So let's say you put 325 in today.
People are not aware of this. Yeah,
so you put the 325 in today, and then the value of the trust fund is $500,000 in 10 years' time. Then you'll end up paying about 6% of the 125,000 difference. Mm-hmm. So you've got 10-year charges, entry charges, and you've also got exit charges when you take it out of the trust fund. So in 05, they more or less killed off trust funds. No one really uses them anymore. The only to finish that off, and we have had there's a lot of negative press about putting your own property into trust funds to get away from care fees. The problem with putting property into a trust fund now is you lose that residential nil rate band.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do it. But it does work, and we've had lots of clients who haven't had to pay care fees because we put
Care fees are
them in.
expensive.
But it's more difficult. We don't do it now because you'd lose that 175 of the nil rate band, the residential nil rate band. So to finish that off, you're much better because trust funds don't really work anymore. I mean, you could do bare trusts. So let's say you'd got assets you want to give your kids, and you want to give it to the kids. You're happy to give them the money, but you still want to have slightly some control over it. Then you've got what we call bare trusts. I
thought that you was talking some slang then, bare trusts.
No. So bare trust is where you actually give the asset to the person or the individuals, but it is in a trust fund. So let's say you wanted to put all your shares, give it to your children now, but you wanted to retain some control over it. They would physically own that asset.
So they're the trustees.
You'd be trustees, they'd be beneficiaries. But bare trusts don't come under the relevant property regime. So there's no chargeable lifetime transfers, there's no exit 10-year charges. So those still can work. So to finish that, I mean, realistically, that's why we look at, you can go on to, we haven't got time today, but, family investment companies are a much better vehicle than trust funds. I mean, they're probably everybody uses that fixed structure rather than using the old trust or the existing trust structure for that reason, because you haven't got chargeable lifetime transfers.
I don't think, as you say, we've got the time to go into the different trusts.
That'll be a good hour.
But to summarise, it depends on the circumstances. But you need to start off that the asset needs to be unencumbered. The rules have changed on it, and there are better other vehicles which people are not aware of that could work better for them. Yeah,
I mean, the problem with the fixed structure, there's only one real drawback to it. I mean, obviously, we've now got 25% tax rates on property and now 10.75. But they're still, if you've got, they're pretty good vehicles for people who've got a lot of cash. They want to pass that cash on to the next generation. Then fixed structures are a good way. The downside to the fixed structure is it's very difficult to leverage the money. So because the fixed structure would usually be where mum and dad have got 10% of the A shares and the kids have got 90% of the B shares, because you want all the growth in those B shares out of the A shares. The problem with that share structure, which is great for the FIC, is that if you go to a mortgage lender, they'll say no, because the only way you can borrow money broadly in a limited company with a mortgage lender, it has to be two people 50-50 or one person. That's it. They won't lend money to the FIC. So
basically give everything away while you're alive. And,
well, it's best not to...
As long as you survive 7 years.
Yeah. Just don't earn as much money as you need to earn. Don't earn any more. We've got to the stage, we were talking about it in the car. It's pointless earning any more, because if you go over 50 grand, roughly, you're giving half of it away. What's the point?
Just mortgage all your property, spend the money. You don't. The inheritance tax goes out the window. Yeah.
Well, you get my missus on for the next one, and she'll tell you all about that. She'll say, no, we don't. What's all this financial planning? You get the money and spend it all.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's
probably
good strategy. This waste of time. This podcast is. That's all we need to say.
Yeah, get your money, spend it. Yeah,
right.
I mean, you do want to. I mean, we weren't going to. And we've finished off back. I mean, there are, when we talk about financial planning, I mean, lifestyle's definitely one of them, where we try and encourage clients, because they don't. I mean, on me on Facebook, I'm always on holiday, but we see that all the time, where when I'm 65, then that's when I'm going to start my my life or whatever. And you're just thinking, well, no, what should be doing? You definitely want to, especially if you're self-employed, in my opinion, is make sure you get your holidays in. Look after yourself a little bit, and and you want that downtime, don't you? Because we see that all the time.
Well, that's what it's about, isn't it? What else are you working for?
Well, I mean, we all like going to work, but a lot of people that it just becomes a bit.
Did you say we all like going to work?
Well, we don't. Well, maybe we like going to work for an hour. But I mean, there's a lot of people that become very fixated on it, and they think it's like some big I've done 18. I'm doing 18 hours.
Badge
a day.
of honour.
Yeah.
Not slept tonight.
And they'll just end.
Not slept tonight.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to try and build that in. But I mean, most of our clients have always got too much money. They're not struggling when they come towards retirement.
They just struggle to pay the tax.
They just don't want to pay any tax. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So.
Okay.
But I mean, again, it's just how financial planning and accountants brand themselves is that we use the word tax mitigation. That will save you some tax, and maybe we shouldn't even use that phrase because we will save you tax, but you're still going to have to pay it, especially in property land.
I think one thing that I spoke to you briefly about, and a lot of misinformation about it, is the SAS and SIPs.
Yeah.
I get asked that on a commercial property. I want to move my commercial property into my pension. And again, like people are out there selling these wonderful schemes, charging 15, 20 grand to set them up because of the value of the properties. But what's your take on this?
We don't pay the 15 or 20 grand. There's the SIP and a SIP realistically.
Let's give a quick summary.
Yeah, I mean the SIP can hold property. They used to hold buy-to-let property. I mean, you can do it through your SIP, but again, it's not really. It's not much point holding commercial or residential property in a SIP because you then got the tax implications of the pension scheme and the restrictions of the pension scheme. So we don't tend to see much uses of SIPs anymore for property schemes. You've got a SIP. It doesn't sound like it because your pension scheme's with Nucleus and run by me. But it is a SIP because it's a self-invested personal pension, which means the SIP means is that you've got a far broader range of where you can put that money. I mean, in market terms. So you could say, well, I want to put it all into Tesla, Nvidia. I want to put it all into Bitcoin. We can do it. That's what a SIP really means.
Is it the SAS then where you can
50%? Correct. Yeah. So the other one we get all the time is SAS. Now we have got local clients who've got millions of pounds worth of property in SASs. The problem you have with the SAS market is that, in my opinion, there's a lot of unscrupulous SAS providers. But not so much now, I have to say, but sort of 10 years ago, would go out to somebody with a couple of £100,000 scheme. I've got it in Aviva, and then charge them those ridiculous fees to try and get them to buy commercial property with. And it was never really. It was just really about them earning fees, really. So the problem you've got with the SASs is that you get this scenario where they tell them, which is true, that they can borrow 50% more of what you've got in the SAS. Yeah. So let's say you and I have got £500,000 in our personal pension schemes. We would put that into the SAS. And then we can borrow or go out to the market
another £500,000
and borrow another £250,000 and then go and buy a commercial property for £750,000. Now the important parts really is that
that sits in your pension then.
Yeah, and that all sits in our pension. So let's say we're running, a manufacturing business. That all adds up, doesn't it? Well, that sounds great because we can put £500,000 in, we can borrow £250,000, we can buy a factory. And then the rental would then be fed back from the company back into the SAS. Yeah. We'd be quite happy with that, and that's great.
It's a charge to the company, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's chargeable on the balance sheet.
In the limited company.
Yeah, corp tax that side, and then we get it tax free. The growth is all tax free, but we are restricted by the pension rules, 25%, etc. So that all makes sense, and we've got lots of clients who do that. The only issue you've got with that is the £250,000 has to be secured on something other than the property. That makes sense.
Okay.
So where we've got clients who've got a lot of stock, you can say, well, I've got £500,000 worth of stock paid for on the balance sheet. You can put the £250,000 against the stock. The person who's lending the money doesn't care because that's against the business, against the property. When you get the SAS trustee, they will say, well, how are we going to get that £250,000 back if the business goes bust? And they would put a lien on the stock of the business. So it all works at that level. The problem you've had, where we see, well, I've got 50 grand in
Yeah.
without being disrespectful. I don't know what I'm saying with the clients, but you know, I've got 70 grand in my pension scheme and I want to go and buy a buy-to-let property. I'm told I can use a SAS.
Yeah.
Broadly,
Well, you can, but it's not.
broadly,
Not real benefit.
can. But the main issues you've got is that if you're buying property and then it's not being used in your business, then that starts to become an issue. The main issue really is now over the past 10 years, because they've got on top of it. The SAS you didn't need a SAS trustee, and now you do. So if you set it up, you've got to use like lawyers, and those lawyers will look after the trust fund. So you can't suddenly say I want all my money back or I want to do this. So
a lot of legislation.
You've got those SAS. I mean, they've curtailed it now as well, where there's only a SAS trustee can open a bank account. So even if you try and do a SAS yourself, which you can, you won't be able to do it because you won't be able to open a bank account, which we get all the time. I've got a SAS and I haven't got a bank account. What do I do? Well, you'll have to use a SAS trustee. Well, I don't want to do that. Why? Well, I don't want to tell them what I've done because there's 20 grand missing. So again, these very complex pension vehicles work for proper businesses. You've got £1 million commercial property, 7 directors, family business. Yeah. They'll pull their pension scheme and they've got assets within the business that they can allocate to the trustee for the loan, and it works really well. Your 100 grand plumber, keep saying plumber, don't we? 100 grand electrician will say, forget it. You don't go near SASs. Yeah. And you can't do buy-to-let property.
But this is the thing, isn't it? A lot of information to take from this podcast and for the listeners, but basically that there are a lot of people out there that will sell you any scheme and you can pay for it, and there might be some benefit down the line for someone, but it might not be right for you.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, and I'm glad it's happened, it's been cleaned up an awful lot. I can't actually think on UK based anyway, in England and Wales, we'll say, under English Welsh law, there's not too many vehicles that I can look at now, as of today, where I would say to your listeners, be very careful of going down that road. I mean, Property 118 has gone. Everybody realises that's not SAS pensions. Everybody realises the problem with those, and it's all been tied up with regulation. So, as we stand today, it's pretty good. But I'm seeing all the time now offshore trusts, offshore bank account type stuff. So. So touch wood at the moment, there's not too much people need to worry about because it's just been tightened up so much that they're not going to get themselves into too much trouble.
Good. Richard, thank you very much for your time today.
No problem.
Very
pleasure.
Informative.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you found that informative.
Thanks for tuning in into Karak with Kully. I hope today's chat gave you something to think about. Maybe a spark to take your own business or mindset to the next level. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Share it with someone who needs that push and stay connected. And if you ever need side business advice, you know where to find me at Taxis. Until next time, keep it strong, keep it real.